The unappetizing vegetarian. Chez Carnivore was known far and wide for serving the finest cuts of meat in the world. Diners would travel miles, endure heavy traffic, and brave waiting lists that stretched on for months just for a taste of their legendary T-bone steak. It was the kind of place where if your steak was anything less than the size of a basketball, they sent it back and fired the chef on the spot. But tonight, something unexpected happened at Chez Carnivore, something that hadn't happened since the restaurant first opened its doors in 1823. A man, seemingly an ordinary man, sat down at one of the polished oak tables, unfolded his napkin, and asked the unthinkable. "Excuse me," he said, scanning the menu. "Do you have any vegetarian options?" The restaurant went silent. The sound of sizzling steaks halted, forks paused mid-bite, and even the Spitfire grill seemed to lose its flame in shock. The waiter, a lanky man with a mustache that looked like it had been trimmed with a carving knife, approached cautiously, as if the man had just uttered some kind of ancient curse. "I beg your pardon, sir," the waiter said, his voice barely above a whisper. The man blinked, seemingly unaware of the culinary blasphemy he had just committed. "Vegetarian options?" he repeated. "You know, something without meat?" The waiter swallowed hard, as if he had just been asked to serve a steak cooked well done. I see," he said, gathering himself. "Well, we do have something vegetarian." He spoke the word vegetarian, as if it were foreign to his tongue, something strange and unnatural. His eyes darted nervously toward the kitchen, where he could feel the head chef's gaze burning through the swinging doors like laser beams. The man, still oblivious to the gravity of his request, smiled. "Great. I'll have whatever you recommend." The waiter hesitated. "Sir, I must warn you. The vegetarian, well, they're not quite what you might expect." The man raised an eyebrow. "Not what I expect. How bad could they be?" The waiter's face darkened as he leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The vegetarians we serve here, sir, they don't have much meat on them. In fact," he glanced around conspiratorially, "they have no meat at all." The man stared at him. "Well, of course, they're vegetarians," he said slowly, unsure if the waiter had fully grasped the concept. "That's the point." "Ah, yes," the waiter said, rubbing his chin. "But you see, vegetarians, while lean, are incredibly tough. They're all sinew and stringy bits. Even if you dress them up with vegetables, you're just masking the fact that there's nothing to them. They don't cook well, no matter how long you leave them in the oven." The man's smile began to fade. "Wait, are you saying you cook vegetarians?" "Oh, absolutely," the waiter said, nodding gravely. "It's all part of the process. We tried serving them raw once, but the customers found them too green." He shuddered at the memory. "So we cook them, but frankly, they're still as tough as an old tire. You could spend an hour trying to chew through one and barely make a dent." The man's confusion grew. "I don't think I'm following. I thought vegetarians meant vegetables." The waiter sighed deeply, as though he had heard this naive misunderstanding far too often. "Vegetarians, vegetables, it's all the same. No real substance, you see. They're hollow, all body, no flavor. In fact, they fall apart under the slightest pressure. You take a bite, and before you know it, you're chewing on air." At this point, the other diners were completely tuned in. A woman at the next table leaned over. "Excuse me," she said, "but have you ever tried grilling the vegetarians? Maybe a bit of smoky flavor would do them some good." The waiter shook his head. "Madam, we've tried everything. We grilled them, barbecued them, even sous vide them in vegetable broth for a week, but they just come out bland. No matter what you do, they just don't cook well. You could marinate them for a month in the finest herbs and spices, and they'd still taste like a rubber garden hose." The man across from him was beginning to look pale. "But what about seasoning?" he asked weakly. "Salt, pepper, paprika?" The waiter's face grew grim. "Sir, you could season a vegetarian with a dump truck full of salt, and it wouldn't make a difference. It's not the seasoning, it's the lack of meat. They simply have no body, no bite, no soul." Another diner chimed in. "But surely they're healthier, right?" The waiter shrugged. "Healthier, perhaps, but at what cost? I once saw a man who ordered a vegetarian leave here as hollow as the dish he ate. He walked in a strong, burly fellow and left looking like a deflated balloon. No one's seen him since." By now, the original man was visibly sweating. "I just wanted something light," he stammered. The waiter smiled knowingly. "Ah, light. I understand. But you see, light is just another way of saying unsatisfying. He straightened up, placing his hands on the table. I would recommend, sir, a steak. Perhaps a nice ribeye. Now that's something with flavor, with body. You'll know you've eaten when you leave. The man gulped. Yes, yes, that sounds much better. The waiter nodded approvingly. An excellent choice, sir. I'll have that ribeye out for you shortly. He turned on his heel and marched confidently toward the kitchen, relieved to have rescued another poor soul from the folly of vegetarianism. As he passed by the chef, who was chopping an onion the size of a football, the waiter muttered, "Close call." Another one almost went for the vegetarian. The chef grunted, "Vegetarians. Uffed. Might as well serve air on a plate." Back at the table, the man sat in stunned silence as the other diners slowly returned to their meals. The woman at the next table leaned over once more, whispering, "You dodged a bullet there. Never order the vegetarian. I hear they don't even sear properly." The man nodded mutely, thankful for the warning. And so, the evening resumed at Chez Carnivore, the land where vegetarians were feared and meat reigned supreme.